What's going on, summoners? Welcome back to another ProGuides video. I'm Kangas, and in this series we cover the hottest new builds from Korea. So whether you're trying to experiment or just stay on top of the meta, check out this video. We're covering builds from every single role, so make sure you hit that sub button and let's get into it. Our first build is a little off meta, and it's for Cassiopeia top lane. Following a small buff to her E, she's much more competent and able to fend for herself in the dangerous combat-heavy top lane island. It's still a solo lane, so Cassiopeia benefits from solo lane XP, but she also holds an inherent advantage over lots of the melee top laners as she's able to poke them and kite from afar with her Q, throwing in a single E on an approaching enemy or several against a retreating foe. Even if your opponent wants to play aggressively and force an extended fight, you can use your W to prevent them from dashing in, deal whatever free damage you can, and then back off to safety. But one thing to note about Cassiopeia is that she's a mechanically intensive champion, so if you find yourself struggling with mechanics of League of Legends, for example kiting or understanding how to position yourself in fights, check out ProGuides.com. We got tons of coaches who can help you overcome anything that you're having a hard time with, and we even have courses by your favorite pros like Core JJ and Doublelift. But moving forward, the biggest strength Cassiopeia brings is her answer to dashes and overall mobility in the game. Oh, and this isn't top lane specific, by the way. Although item mobility was nerfed some patches ago, any movement built into a champion's ability set remains intact. Cassiopeia's W, as well as Rylai's that she almost always builds, helps to keep those foes grounded. At the moment, she simply holds a slightly higher top lane win rate, which can be attributed to a combination of better lane matchups as well as the unfamiliarity that enemies will find with the matchup. For runes, you run Conqueror, Presence of Mind, Legend Tenacity, Last Stand, Mana Flow Band, Transcendence, Double Adaptive Force, and a choice of a defensive rune. Presence of Mind is an absolute must, and you will run into some serious issues early on without it. Next up, we have Akshan top lane. While rather unpopular, top lane Akshan is gradually picking up some steam. At the start of patch 11.15, he hovered around a 41% win rate, but has seen some impressive increases ever since. This upward trend is bound to continue as players master the character. And yes, the abundance of terrain in the top lane is definitely a great incentive to run him there instead of the mid lane. As a ranged top laner, Akshan is a nemesis to many other top lane mains. He's able to poke from afar and disengage when he expects danger coming his way. Akshan also scales pretty well, most notably with his scoundrel effect, which allows him to resurrect allies during teamfights later into the game. And yes, we still can't believe that they actually added that to League. Also, because of Akshan's built-in mobility with his grappling hook, as well as his ability to camouflage, Flash isn't really a necessity. Instead, you can run Ignite for extra kill pressure, and it's also super effective against lots of the top laners with built-in sustain, like Aatrox, Tahm Kench, and Irelia. For runes, you run Press the Attack, Presence of Mind, Legend Alacrity, Cut Down, Taste of Blood, Ravenous Hunter, Double Adaptive Force, and then your choice of a defensive rune. So that covers our top lane builds. Take a look at the screen where we've placed a recap of all of them. Save them, write them down, do whatever you need to, but next up, we got jungle builds. First up, the Monkey King is back in the jungle. Players are once again picking Wukong jungle, but with a different build than we're used to seeing. Divine Sender was an easy go-to for Wukong this season, especially when it got buffed and he became the strongest top laner in the game for a patch. This jungle build focuses solely on burst damage, and you'll be utilizing Duskblade of Drakthar. If you manage to pick up a takedown, you'll be able to stealth and then reposition. It's kind of like casting your W multiple times in a fight. For runes, you run Conqueror, Triumph, Legend Alacrity, Coup de Grace, Magical Footwear, Cosmic Insight, Attack Speed, Adaptive Force, and Armor. For items, build Duskblade of Drakthar, Defensive Boots, Essence Reaver, Sterix Gauge, Death Stance, and a Guardian Angel. With both Duskblade of Drakthar and Essence Reaver, you're looking at a ton of burst damage. With these two items built first, you'll easily be able to sneak up on squishies and one-shot them. If that's not enough damage for you though, you should also know that players typically run Ignite with this build. As the game progresses, some extra tankiness is necessary, otherwise you'll press E, jump in, and just die as you're pressing R. So a Sterix Gauge immediately provides some protection and buys you enough time to take out your primary target. Then with a stealth reset, you should hopefully have enough time to escape or at least reposition yourself. And a side note, this build also includes a ton of ability haste. Lowering the cooldown of your Q in particular is important as this will allow you to activate Essence Reaver's Spellblade effect much more frequently. Now the next jungle build is for Graves. It's an interesting one because what differentiates it the most is the use of the summoner spell Teleport. And yes, there is a specific game plan going on with this build. Graves is great at farming the jungle. He's got a solid clear speed, and he scales incredibly well. He builds plenty of damage, and also ends up quite tanky because of his E, as well as any defensive items that he chooses to build. Now, I'm sure that we've all had that one Master Year Shyvana that refuses to gank or help out anywhere and just continues to power farm and just lets the game get away from them. But running Teleport on Graves allows you to focus on efficiently farming and being ready for counter ganks. You can subvert the enemy jungle pressure with teleports, and if timed well, you can actually punish enemies for committing too hard. Having Summon or Teleport available already applies pressure on the enemy jungler. You're always able to match their ganks, and if that first 2v2 or 3v3 goes poorly, you can instantly snowball out of control since Graves just kinda does that. For runes, you're actually going to run Dark Harvest, Sudden Impact, Eyeball Collection, Ravenous Hunter, Triumph, Legend Alacrity, Attack Speed, Adaptive Force, and Armor. For items, you'll build Immortal Shield Bow, Plated Steel Caps, Phantom Dancer, Death Stance, Lord Dom's Regards, and Infinity Edge. So that covers the jungle builds. We'll put them on the screen for you to review one last time, and then move on to the mid lane. Irelia was buffed recently, and you can guess that that means players have picked her back up in the mid lane. In Korea, she's especially popular because of her natural affinity towards the item Wit's End. Against opponents that deal mostly magic damage, Wit's End is their kryptonite. Irelia benefits from the on-hit damage as well as extra magic resistances. Her W once again reduces magic damage as well, making Irelia a fantastic answer to a variety of different mid laners, especially ones who deal telegraphed burst damage. As a result of Irelia's high damage output as well as her mobility, she's got no issues killing the majority of mages. For runes, use Conqueror, Overheal, Legend Alacrity, Coup de Grace, Biscuit Delivery, Cosmic Insight, Attack Speed, Adaptive Force, and then your choice of a defensive rune. Next up are items, as you'll purchase Wit's End, Defensive Boots, Immortal Shield Bow, Blade of the Rune King, Death Stance, and Guardian Angel. Immortal Shield Bow is just a solid purchase on Irelia. Especially against enemies that deal burst damage, the shield as well as lifesteal are fantastic for her kit. She's just able to do what she does best, fight her way out of death. Missing the kill on her by even 1 HP gives her room to turn the fight around as she quickly attacks and heals back up even in those near-death situations. Now before we continue with our next mid lane pick, I gotta go over a question of the day. I'm genuinely curious about which rune you think is OP and why. It can be a minor one or a keystone, but either way, let me know your thoughts. Personally, I think Presence of Mind is absolutely insane, and I know a lot of you mage players out there are probably getting upset with me saying that, but I just think it's busted. But again, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Now another mid laner pick that is making a comeback is Tristana. This build is similar to ones that we've seen in the past, except for one thing, being the item start. First off, you'll run Hail of Blades, Taste of Blood, Eyeball Collection, Ravenous Hunter, Legend Bloodline, Presence of Mind, Attack Speed, Adaptive Force, and then your choice of a defensive rune. Where this build deviates from what we've previously seen is that you build Eclipse, then Berserker's Greaves, the Collector, Phantom Dancer, Infinity Edge, and Lord Dom's Regards. Building Eclipse and the Collector first, Tristana becomes sort of an assassin-like marksman. You gain a bunch of mobility from Eclipse as well as some extra damage. With the lethality that the two items provide, you can jump onto an enemy, cast your E, and detonate it to quickly burst them down. But to round out the build, you still build classic marksman items so that you can scale and still hit as hard as the late game Tristana should. Now wrapping up the mid lane, we actually have a mid lane / jungle combo. The combo today is Skarner and Corki. A very odd combo for sure, but let me explain why this duo is gaining popularity in Korea. As most of us know, Corki scales incredibly well. His weak early game can prove to be quite troublesome, but if you manage to get past that, you can gain access to consistent high damage output. You also have a mid laner that can either siege or teamfight just as effectively because of Corki's rockets. Basically, in this combo, Skarner puts up the tent for Corki. His gank pressure allows Corki to either pick up kills or a CS lead. It also forces the enemy mid laner to build a QSS, putting them further behind. Corki is then able to outscale them since they sink at least 1300 gold into an item that they probably didn't want to build anyway. As the game progresses, Skarner still retains his pick-making pressure and Corki only gets stronger and stronger. For Skarner setup, run Phase Rush, Nimbus Cloak, Celerity, Water Walking, Ultimate Hunter, Cheap Shot, Attack Speed, Adaptive Force, and Armor. The items you'll go for are Turbo Chem Tank, Ionian Boots of Lucidity, Thornmail, Anathema's Chains, Force of Nature, and either a Sterix Gauge or a Gargoyle Stoneplate. Corki will run Hail of Blades, Sudden Impact, Zombie Ward, Ravenous Hunter, Legend Bloodline, Coup de Grace, Attack Speed, Adaptive Force, and a choice of defensive rune. For items, build Immortal Shield Bow, Sorc Shoes, Mana Mune, Essence Reaver, Infinity Edge, and Rapid Fire Cannon. And that's it for the mid lane. Again, all the builds are on the screen so you can check them out, but next up, we got the bot lane. We have one bot lane and one support build to go over today. First is for Varus. This build is being used in the LCK currently and is absolute destruction. He's one-shotting everybody and everything down in the bot lane. So yeah, you can probably guess, but it is of course Lethality Varus. For runes, you run Hail of Blades, Taste of Blood, Eyeball Collection, Ultimate Hunter, Presence of Mind, Coup de Grace or Cut Down, Double Adaptive Force, and then your choice of a defensive rune. For items, build Eclipse, Lucidity Boots, Manamune, Serylda's Grudge, Edge of Night, and either Azonia's Hourglass or Guardian Angel as your defensive item. The defensive item must come last though, because you need to build lethality and damage first to remain relevant and then snowball your lead. If the game drags on and you end up with a surplus of gold, then you build Guardian Angel and then sell it if it's on cooldown, replacing it with Azonia's. Eclipse provides lethality as well as some mobility to help Varus kite enemies. Manamune, Serylda's, and Edge of Night provide extra damage, and Edge of Night also makes Varus harder to catch because of the spell shield. Not only does this build deal insane damage, it's also pretty safe. There's plenty of defense that comes naturally with it. And now finally, we have a build for a cool support Trundle. For his runes, run Hail of Blade, Cheap Shot, Zombie Ward, Ultimate Hunter, Biscuit Delivery, Time Warp Tonic, Double Adaptive Force, and then your choice of a defensive rune. The items are Steel Shoulder Guards, Ionian Boots of Lucidity, Locket of the Iron Solari, Anathema's Chains, Wardstone, and then either Frozen Heart, Thornmail, or Spear of Visage based on what you need. Support Trundle brings some very niche utility as well as a solid amount of early game damage. His Q increases his AD, so if you're able to get in range of the enemy, you can deal some serious damage with a combination of the ability along with Hail of Blades. Like you'd expect, Trundle's Pillar is also an incredible zoning tool that also provides room for plenty of skill expression. With good timing, you can do crazy things like block hooks or prematurely end enemy jumps. But one of the biggest strengths of Trundle support is obviously his ultimate. You can steal defensive stats from enemy tanks, and if they only have one, teamfights become that much easier to win. So that wraps up our bottom lane and support builds. Take one last look at the screen for a final recap. And that will conclude our Korean builds for patch 11.16. Hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and also make sure to check out the description for a link to join our Discord. You can make friends and also be notified of any future giveaways for prizes like RP and free coaching. Until next time though everybody, best of luck on the Rift, stay hydrated, and I'll see you next time.